Hey, you're here again. It's me, Chris Brogan. Good to see you. I'm so glad. I saved some space for you here. There's always room for a fellow light catcher. And we're going to talk about failure today. We're going to talk about failure as a teacher. Because what I've come to learn is that no matter the other ways that you can learn something, for whatever reason, boy, do I seem to like to learn by way of failing. So why don't you grab something to drink? I've got iced coffee, leftover iced coffee. In fact, it's ADD, but I have like 3 bits of leftover iced coffee from various trips that I've taken. What are you drinking? Hey, leave a comment. Tell me just that. Tell me what you're drinking. Let's talk about failure as a teacher and what you can learn from it. But first, why don't we just take a moment? Why don't we just breathe? This is our time. We can have this time. We can make space. Maybe you've got a little snack. Maybe this is the first chance you've had to take a break all day, and you're going to give it to me. You're going to spend a little time with me. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Earlier today, as right after sunrise in what they call the golden hour, I went out to take some shots, and I went to this very little bitty walk around little island called Deer Island. And I had this setup, which is just my Sony A7iv IV and a Helios 44M, which is probably my favorite vintage lens now out of all the lenses I have. And I'm out there shooting and I'm having a good old time, and I'm just shooting kind of nature, and I'm knowing that I can crop in a little if I have to. And I turn and there's a golden eagle. I only know it's a golden eagle because I looked it up after the fact. But I turned and there was a golden eagle, and this lens is 58 millimeters, which is good for, like, you could do a portrait on it if you wanted. You could get a scene. It's going to be kind of a tightened up kind of a scene. Some people would say it's far too zoomed in for you to see anything. Well, you know what I saw? I saw an eagle way out there, like a speck. So I have an eagle-shaped speck photo. And I was like, son of a gun, I didn't have the right lens with me. But the plan was, it wasn't that I failed. And we're going to get to this. We're going to talk all about failure, right? It wasn't that I failed. I had just gone out there with a whole other mission in mind. That's already a lesson I'm going to give you about failure. It doesn't count as failure until it's an actual thing you set out to do and you didn't accomplish it that time. I set out to take photos at golden hour. Mission accomplished. But the failure was I really now want that eagle. I want to get a shot. So if I had had a big zoom lens, I would have been able to get it. But see how that's not a failure? We're going to talk about failure. But we're going to do a couple other things, and I am just about to have to go into a very many hour-long meeting that'll go way into darkness. So take a look around. See that sunlight? See that beautiful, like, Simpsons-looking sky behind me? It'll be all gone by the time you're back, and it'll just be me and you and some warm lights. Tony Robbins once said, he's famous for having said it, you either succeed or you learn. And so failure to me is something that you can reframe into learning. I think that's important. I think if you start there, a lot of everything else you and I are going to talk about gets better. Because if you don't consider failure to be such a negative thing, then you can really unlock the big win. Take this from someone who has made many, many, many failures over decades. But because of those failures, I've learned so much more than other people. Sometimes I was known for something slightly similar but different. Somebody said to me once, I see like you're so prolific. You do so many things. What's going on? And I said, well, it's because I don't know how to win exactly. So I will take 100 shots and hit 2 of them, but that's 2 more wins than if you take no shot because you're still nervous, you're worried about the failure. So if you consider failure to be a learning, then it's not so bad. Now, I have been told many times, and I'm willing to accept this is true, that maybe don't seek to fail. Maybe don't just say, well, it's okay if you fail. I get what they're getting at. I think it's like a fine line, because if you aim at failure, guess what? You can hit it. You can hit it so much easier. But this whole notion of like, you can't fail, that all that does is lock you up, right? You know, when I say that, you feel it, right? So let's take photography. When I go out and I start learning stuff, a lot of times it comes with failure. I'm going to tell you when that happened to me last week. I took a photo of this really wonderful woman named Samantha, and I was so excited, and I took the photo and I was really proud. I used the Helios lens again because I'm really trying to dig into it, and it looked good. I checked the back of the camera, you know, this little 3-inch screen with my blurry eyes, and I looked and I said, this is good. I hit it. It's perfect. Great focus, Chris Brogan. Only it wasn't. And I didn't find out until I got home, and then I was embarrassed because like it wasn't like I was going to drive an hour back to see this person and take another photo of them. So I failed. But you know what I did with that failure? I set out to learn. And so what I set out to learn in that case was how to get really good at manual focus. All the things I could possibly do better next time. What else might I have missed in the process? Where else could I pick something up and do it a little bit better? And I stuck the lens on the camera and said, that's it, I'm just gonna use this lens. I'm just gonna work it until I do better. So today, when I saw the eagle in the tree and I realized, oh no, I don't have the right lens, I was working off the other failure. I was learning from that other issue that I had, which was for sure a failure. But today wasn't a failure because I was still doing better with that Helios, and I was doing better at focusing manual with it. I learned through a bunch of different YouTube videos how to focus better. That's a success, don't you think? We'll talk a little more about fear of failure, because I think that if we get through that, if we get through some ways to step over that, a lot of the other parts just get easier.
3 hours later.
Can you move it along? I'm all out of time cards.
See what I mean? Dark out. Then there's failure that helps signal to you that you're not ready for something, at least in a moment, or you're not ready yet, or you're still kind of building a skill. When I took a few days off from work, I realized that, wow, sometimes I use work as a way to not have to deal with some of the other stuff in my life, and that should surprise about nobody. Like, a lot of people do this. And I realized, oh man, that's the thing I have to remember, because one thing we failed to do is make time to feel and breathe and whatever. And we get so busy and we have such good reasons and we're so busy, and busy sometimes is an excuse not to do some of the stuff that we need to do. And it's a way to hide some of how we're feeling and all that. And so sometimes we fail ourselves because we're not ready. That's a really uncomfortable kind of failure. Like, that's a hard one. You have to sit with that one, right? And I'll link it back to photography for my people who mostly want to talk photography. This is about, I went down to Harvard Square in Cambridge and I wanted to do some portraits and I wanted to take pictures of people, and I had my portrait lens and I was ready to go. I was so shy and so nervous and had so much anxiety. Now, I've done this before. I've approached absolute strangers to take portraits, but I don't know. I felt anxiety. I couldn't quite do it. It just wasn't there. I wasn't ready to do it. So that was a failure. And there was a series of failures I just talked about. And I guess I want you to think about that too, because what I most take away from that is that sometimes we hide our hardest work in being so busy. Sometimes we hide our hardest work by having so much to do that we don't really focus in on something. That's, the whole concept of photography is meditation. And that's also back to the whole idea I was saying about this lens, the Helios here, the 44M. I can tell you, one photographer, I had seen his story, he said, I had one body and one lens with just a backup body and backup lens, but the same gear for several of his missions. And he said that the concept was that he knew the lens so well from taking so many photos over so much time in so many circumstances and situations, that he could really anticipate and really knew what the lens was about. And I said, oh man, I think I'm going to give that a go. I have a bunch of vintage lenses. I have a handful of modern lenses. But I think if I really locked into one lens for a while, I could then start working through some of my failures, like how to get better at manual focusing, how to get better at all the other things that I want to do. I think that's kind of important. Starting with the next episode of this show, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing viewer photos for the week. I've got some already sent in, but if you were working on the challenge with me, if you had tried a 30-day or even some smaller number than 30-day challenge, send me those photos if you're ready. Chris@chrisbrogan.com. Tell me the name that you want me to use. I think it's Andrew sent me his and told me to use the name Andrew. Send me any URL you want me to send people to, like, I don't know, your Instagram, your YouTube page, your website, whatever. And just send me a sample of them. Don't send me the whole project, and we can talk about it. Now, let's do a challenge just for next week, just one viewer challenge, and it's on the idea of failure. Let's make it this. Let's give yourself permission to take 20 shots in which only one of them has to be something you feel good about, which means you can have 19 failures and still have one decent shot. Now, don't just rattle off 20 shots and send in one. Try working on 20 shots to do something for you, to make it feel like something for you. We'll keep it open-ended for this one. Take 20 shots and make one success, and allow the other 19 to be failures if they are. Tell me a little bit about that. Send email on this challenge of the week to chris@chrisbrogan.com. Let me just think. Oh, a mindful thought for this episode. There's success and there's learning. If you recast how failure means to you and what it means to you, it gets easier to understand failure's place in your genesis and in your success and in your growth. That's so important. So again, let's tie that to that challenge. Take that one good photo out of 20 and send something in for me. And that's really it. If you want to take a look at some of the other stuff that I've done in this vein, I want you to take a look at this playlist that I'll put in the corner and tell me if any of this resonates with you as well. I'm really grateful, glad that you're here. If you haven't subscribed, we're down to like 70-something% of people not subscribing, which is good. It's usually 90-something%. But if you haven't subscribed, please do. I'm always grateful for you. Thanks for coming and having a sip of something with me. And thank you so much for being part of this world. Go catch some light and then report back and tell me what you came up with. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'm Chris Brogan. See you soon.